faking everything on the internet to keep this propaganda going.
This video surfaced out of China, and it looks like their city is floating in the clouds. Of course, we can't verify if the video is real or not.
They're fascinating people with all this dumb alien talk. It is absolutely 100% ridiculous when mankind does enough damage for itself. Listen to me close. Mankind does not have the power to destroy the earth, okay? But they can certainly destroy each other. Demons work through people to accomplish something. There's no ET, all this alien stuff is just diverting people. And what it's doing is it's training people to allow any spirit into their lives. It's not about aliens. It's about a person inviting demons into their lives. That's what it's about.
What? What the fuck?
This world will turn upside down in two ways: psychologically and physically, because the rotation of the earth is going back to what it would be. They know the rotation of the earth has changed every time the cycle comes. And I think we're months away from the end of the down curve to the cycle we're in. Right when we hit the bottom, that's when everything goes berserk. That's why they're telling people about these new planets. Oh, they find, you know what, it's so, you can't really trust science either. They reportedly find one planet, then they lose it. How do you lose a planet? Because they made it up. And it's really becoming laughable. They're making up stuff, telling the public about all these different things. But I'll tell you this about the heavens. When the red dust begins to fall, what you better do is understand that that is the beginning of the end of everything that you knew. When that red dust comes, when it settles upon the water, when it covers the moon, and the moon turns red, you better know that is the beginning of the end. Not the end of the world, but the end of things that you knew. You better start walking spiritually today, that when that day comes, you'll be okay. You don't know if you have months left. Let me tell you how fast it can get here. Can I tell you how fast it can get here? We could be here today talking on air, and that red dust could begin to fall tomorrow. Do you know why? Because it's a matter of almost like fluid dynamics. Certain parts of celestial mechanics. A lot of static involved, electronic discharges. But it's traveling so fast it could be here upon us before anybody can notice it was even traveling. We know that we live in the time because 5 asteroids have been determined with the same material they dug up. Listen to what they've been doing. These archaeologists have been digging up dust and materials. So we send all these probes out in space, trying to read the debris of a tale of what's really passing, while they woo and awe you with things that are passing the earth in the public's eye. So they're matching up what rock goes with what, so they can find the cycles of when the surface of this planet cracks up. And they found their matches. 35 specimens. 35 samples matched with 35 known objects and dust trails they found in space. They can, through the real type of time measurements, not carbon dating, that is absolutely ridiculous. They can now find out when it's coming back. Let me give an example. Apophis goes by us, listen to this, Apophis goes by us in 2029, correct? Why does it come back 7 years later? It's not coming around until 2029. That's more than 7 years. But when it passes us, it's coming back 7 years later. Do you guys understand me? They quit talking about Apophis because it probably will hit us in 2036. I would go so far as to say it will hit us. It will hit us. All right? But it's coming back 7 years later. So what does that tell you? All this stuff on the internet that you read about the orbits of comets and things of that nature. And they tell you, well, it comes back every 3,500 years. That's hogwash. Why does Apophis go by in 2029 and then 7 years later it comes back? All this talk about these cycles that they have told the public, that they have set people strategically out there to leak a story. Listen, you want to make sure you get a lie into the public venue? Then call a story a leak. Everybody runs away with it. Or say somebody died to get this information out. See, what I'm telling you is that you can hardly trust what's out there. But you can see, you'll be able to see that red dust. You're going to be able to see it. You'll understand what a meteor storm is. All right? You're going to see things hitting the earth. And when the great hail begins to form, you'll know that the forces that have held so many things together for so long are out of whack, because physics will break down. You guys are going to experience strange problems, electronic phenomena you've never experienced before. I'm giving you signs that you can see for yourselves for what's happening. Listen, any demonic entity affects electronics. It's pure and simple. With electronic phenomena, you know you have a demon present or spiritual energy is high. You'll notice that too, weird things happening. But in the skies, you're going to notice a hue. You're also going to be aware that something has happened to the plant life. The plant life is not going to be like it used to be. Many trees are going to die. Listen to me. Many trees will die, and not from insects. You're going to die. Plant life is going to begin to die. All right? You're going to be able to see this with your own eye. No, they're not going to discuss this because it sounds stupid, just to be honest with you. I'm showing you things you're going to see with your own eye. That will be your proof. If you have to see something, that will be your proof. Even now as we speak, forces are exponentially increasing upon the face of the earth. Not gradually, exponentially. Do you know what that means? Magma is on the move under the crust of the earth like you wouldn't believe. It's only a matter of time, of days, until a big poofy explosion. I mean a big magma explosion. The oceans in the South Atlantic and South Pacific, life is going to die there. Get ready for more lobster floating up to the surface, fully cooked. I bet you could reach down there and just eat it yourself, crack it open and eat it, right? It's funny, don't let them beguile you either. You see, while everybody is looking, it is not what you see that can hurt you so much as the things you don't know about and can't see. Most of the volcanoes of the earth are under the ocean. They are not on land. How many of you know that? Have you guys ever investigated the volcanic activity underneath the ocean? That's where most of the horror stories are, under the ocean. Under the ocean. And we're not talking about just, have you guys ever heard of a black volcano? Not because it is black, it's because it oozes out carbon. Black stuff comes out of it. Well, they have other volcanoes where nickel comes out of it. All sorts of things. Now, what is this going to do? Well, let me tell you, let me give you this. As this continues, we have stuff going into the atmosphere. You may know it or have heard about it as climate change. Do you know why climate change is very important? Because it's happening solar system wide. They're having climate change on Mars. In the last 14 years, everything has been heating up, but on Mars and Venus, it's really heating up. I mean, for goodness sakes, you got water trickling down off of certain places in Mars. And the Earth, too, in a like manner, is doing the same thing. And the tilt of Mars is changing, and the Earth is about to get ripped. Listen, the Earth will get jerked in a 2-degree change in its axis. Now just think of that. Think of a 2-degree change in the axis of Earth in less than 1 minute. You know what happened with that? It's called a double wobble. It wobbles already, but there will be a wobble within a wobble. And the internal wobble is going to be rough and continuous, and it's not going to stop. People are going to be sick for days on end. It's going to feel like you're seasick on the surface of the Earth. You know that happens, it's happening right now to Jupiter, a double wobble. It came from the outside coming in. That's why they were in a rush to go take pictures of Pluto. Not because, let's see what's on there. They didn't want to know that. They can see Pluto and the forces acting upon Pluto from all the way here on Earth. But that's not what they're looking for. They were not looking for the beautiful colors on Pluto. They wanted to see if there were, they have different sensors on what passed Pluto. All right? They showed you the pictures. They're not concerned about the pictures they showed everybody else. They want the magnetic data that came back from the probe. That's what they want. They're not concerned about the pictures on Mars either. They really don't care what's on the surface of Mars. They want to know what happens to it because it is our warning that we're next. You see, when something happens to Mars, we have about 96 hours before we endure the same thing. So why wouldn't you invest money and put probes all over Mars? That's our early warning system. Then you have other probes that are closer to the sun, right? You have to have those there because the sun has a bad habit of shooting out these magnetic vortices that nobody ever talks about. Huge magnetic, we're not talking about a flare or anything else. We're talking about a magnetic vortice, which can actually affect our magneto. If one is pointed in our direction, you will not see it. But guess what happens? The sun will turn red just by the photons being dragged in different directions. Light will appear to have changed from the sun. And then it's going to grow a tail. I wonder what the explanation is going to be with that. When the sun grows a tail. When its sister, I guess you could call it. When those forces begin to act in all the sun's particles begin to drift out to a certain location. I wonder what they're going to say. It's going to look like a teardrop. What would you do if you saw the sun as a teardrop? Of course, you'd have to have some magnificent shades because it's going to be extremely bright, and then all of a sudden, poof, it'll put out a greater amount of heat, but not the photons. The photons will be redirected to something else. I wonder what people will do, and it will have no light till the second object passes. It will have zero light. You see, when you live in a binary system, when the cold star, I'm just saying cold, when the cold star gets near the one with all the energy, it begins to feed off of the one with the energy. How many of you knew that? Nobody out there studies cosmology? So it takes all the active components, the photons, all the light and heavy particles, the fuel and everything else, and it sucks it into itself. It kind of refuels, right? What is that called? That means the sun is going to go black. It'll go black, but it's going to be twice as hot. They lied to people about an ice age. Let me tell you about this ice age garbage that they put out. In the North Atlantic Ocean, right? You've heard of the Gulf Stream. People said, well, the Gulf Stream has stopped. And some people say, well, the Gulf Stream is still going. I know for a fact the Gulf Stream has not stopped. I know that for a fact. There are sensors in the ocean. You interpret the data and the Gulf Stream has not stopped. Something else has happened, though. You see, hot water flows on the surface of the ocean, right? It will evaporate, losing what it will do is lose some of its content, and it begins to sink. That water begins to sink at a rate of, I don't know, so many feet per second, which causes the currents in the ocean, right? The cold water is down at the base of the ocean. The hot currents are at the top of the ocean. And salinity is very important. The content, right, of the water is very important. The salt content and everything else. So fresh water at one point stalled this North Atlantic flow, causing Europe to freeze. Europe froze to pieces, right? And that was caused through the melting of the end of the last glacier age. If you look at a weather map on infrared and you see the cloud formations, you're going to notice in the South Pacific Oceans, there's a stalled system that's constantly evaporating. Clouds are coming from this area. Certain parts in the North Pacific, you'll see the same. But the North Atlantic Ocean, you're going to see the flow of clouds in a certain pattern, right? A certain pattern. And as the South Atlantic and the Indian Ocean begin to heat up, that's what causes these storm drivers that hit Florida and things of that nature, right? But something else is happening. Everybody's worried about the hot water not being hot anymore. It's going to be cooled off. But what happens when it gets too hot, ladies and gentlemen? What happens? The cold water at the bottom is going to begin to heat up. And guess what happens? It interrupts the return stream. It causes a superheating event. And that's through volcanism. And then when that happens, the jet stream is affected. And then when that happens, you have massive turbulence in the jet stream. And then when that takes place, the current drivers in the southern hemisphere of the Earth overwhelm the flow of all the oceans. The jet stream reverses. The currents begin to change. They do something weird. Ocean life begins to die. All because of volcanism. Not because of your cars or cow farts. Nothing to do with that. The same process is also happening to other planets. What do we see here? We see an increased energy activity inside the Earth. We see increased energy activity inside the sun. We see increased magnetic energies. You see, Mars is a very weak magnetosphere. So why is it strengthening? Because something is activating the components inside of Mars. What I'm saying is this: something is irradiating the core, the planets. Radiation is pouring into the Earth right now. It's pouring into the Earth. Radiation is pouring in to Mars, to the core of the planet. Radiation is certainly pouring into Venus. Where is it coming from? Where is this radiation coming from? From something approaching. We're dealing with greater and greater amounts of radiation. Greater and greater amounts of radiation. Radiation is energy. You know what? If you have a pot that's not boiling in a pressure cooker, you have no problems if the seal is not right. Right? You turn your eye up just a little bit more. What that is you're introducing more and more radiation in the way of heat to that water, causing it to boil. Now, when it won't boil under massive amounts of pressure, it becomes superheated. Then if you allow oxygen to come in there, then poof, right? Something's going to go wrong. In like manner, something's happening like that to the Earth. That's why magma is on the move like you've never seen before. Some of the conduits that would stretch 200 kilometers, right, down to the source of where magma's normally generated, things of that nature, they too were on a cycle, kind of like the ocean currents. They too have a current, a cooling and a heating type current, cold and hot, right? Of course, you can't call magma cold. You can call it hot. But you had these cooler regions that was solidified back in the rock. What's happening is it's not cooling. It's heating up. So the rock is disappearing. That's the only thing holding Yellowstone from going kapow. Right? It's the only thing holding Yellowstone back from doing that is that the rock is solidifying. But we have a problem. It's too much energy. Too much heat. The heat factor is going up inside the Earth by external forces, which means nobody can do anything about it. It's coming from out there. And what's happening is that our magnetosphere allows photons to enter into to the surface of the Earth harmlessly. You know, that infrared energy is why you feel the heat of the sun. But it blocks ultraviolet, so does our atmosphere and everything else. But what's happening is, through atmospheric compression and changes in our magnetosphere, charged particles are coming in to the surface of the Earth, and they go right through the surface into the core, where they're already, they're just activating the core of the Earth. I mean, making it hyper, like somebody needs to get the core of the Earth some Ritalin to, slow down. But this is a process this Earth has undergone. They won't tell you this. This has happened before. More and more cosmic rays are coming in and heating up the Earth from the inside out. That's going to cause volcanism. It's going to cause a type of swelling. Right? They tell you that we have sinkholes because the water is gone and people dug out too much salt. Well, the water is leaving. What happens when magma is flowing under a big circle of water in the Earth? Does not the water begin to evaporate? It can go through a chemical change also. The components in the water can go through a chemical change, and now you have superheated liquid. That happens deep down in the Earth. You can scarcely call it water. You can call it superheated liquid. And if it's ever exposed to oxygen, because most of the oxygen's burned off, so how can you call it water, H2O? I mean, some really weird things that have been happening underneath the crust of the Earth. No one needs to talk about it because you can't go and investigate it. But it's going to become obvious to the point where our oceans, because has anybody ever heard that the oceans will boil? Have you ever heard that? The oceans will boil. What could cause the oceans to boil? What could do that? I'll tell you what can do that. A change in the atmosphere. If something happens to our atmosphere, in less than 2 minutes, the ocean water will begin to boil. If it happens slowly, nobody's going to live on the coasts. No one. And guess what? It's happening slowly. So it's going to be very difficult to breathe on the coasts. It's coming. It's coming. Climate changes, the real type climate changes, spiritual endurance that we have to have, physical changes we're going to feel in our body, emotional changes inspired by the loosening of more and more demons because mankind is inviting them, materialistic destruction, a phenomenon that the Lord's going to do for us and against the world, right? So we have to deal with quite a bit, a lot. But the changes in the crust of the Earth will happen at the probably one thing that's going to startle most people, capture their attention, is the overwhelming increase in meteor storms. Now, I have really put forth an effort to warn people of meteor storms that are coming, to make them aware that meteor storms are coming to this Earth. Well, now they're going to have to just experience the meteor storms, the crustal displacements, and things of that nature. So guess what? We have to prepare our souls in truth because the change is at hand. And I'll tell you again, August, October 2017, that's your true time. You need to prepare in everything. Listen, everything up to that time. I know the second wave is coming in 302 days. It's going to be 500 times stronger than the first one. And if you go back on the instruments, you'll see the impact of the first one. You'll hear the stories about the electronic phenomena that took place in space. You'll notice that the sun also reacted as soon as it got in here, and that was very minute. This one's 500 times the magnitude of the first one, and that's in late December it hits. But your true preparation, because nobody knows what that's going to do, but your true preparation spiritually, and the end of that thing is 2017 is a harsh decision you're going to have to make, which means every hour counts. And you're going to see changes in the coming days, weeks, and months like you wouldn't believe. In the coming days, some of you may have to look 3 times because the world is going berserk. Wouldn't it be sad? Is this a sad thought or what? Imagine yourselves in your house. The Lord comes to you and he says, "Child, stay in the kingdom because this house is going to need you." So the first 6 weeks you're in the kingdom, you're doing everything. A year later, guess what happens to you? You say, well, nothing bad is happening. Then you start slipping up, doing things in the world. And when you do that, sure enough, calamity comes to your home. The whole house is torn apart. And then you say, well, Lord, you didn't warn me. And he'll say, yes, I did. This is how it's going to be with a lot of Christians in the United States of America and abroad all around this world. When they start giving up left and right, they're going to say the same thing. Well, nothing's happening. I can relax. Why do you think everybody wants a date? They want a date so they can go back to sleep. Anybody who looks for a date is going to push the button on the alarm clock and go back to sleep. They're going to go back to sleep. Every hour is precious. And when it becomes, listen, I'm trying to stress to you, when it becomes real. When it becomes real, it's too late. Do you understand that? When it becomes physically real, it's too late. There's no more prep time. Now you're in the middle of it. You can only prepare for things before it happens. Once it begins to take effect, you cannot prepare. You have to utilize what you have. Can you not see the mercy and the grace upon our lives? All this time people complain, well, nothing has happened yet. You better thank God nothing has happened yet in your life. But that's not for everybody. Brutal killings, rapes, murders, just you name it, every second of every day. Tens of thousands go missing every single month. No trace of them whatsoever. And you're telling me nothing has happened yet, and you're looking for a date so you can spend time at a bar a little bit longer. You're looking for a date so that you can strategically set up a time when you're going to conform to the word of the Lord. And you've refused to do it today. That's why you look for a date. To that person he will say, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. I never knew you. Anyone who seeks a sign is truly a wicked generation. It's a wicked generation because they don't want to stay prepared. They want a warning so they can get rid of all their trash and then sit up straight like they acted good all along. Like a bad student always wants to know when the teacher's coming back. But the good student is preoccupied with their work. The bad student is peeking all the time. Is the teacher coming? You only peek for the teacher when you're doing something wrong. You only peeked for your parents when you were doing something wrong. Because when you're doing something right, you're in a different mindset. The people who look for a sign are doing something wrong. Jesus said that, not me. He said it's a wicked generation that seeks for a sign. And many people still can't comprehend that. We need to realize that the Father's in full control, that we are His children, and we have no more time.
What the fuck?
WTF. WTF. What the fuck does WTF mean? What the fuck? Oh,